Hello my YouTube friends, it's Richard, founder of Short Term Rental University and Airbnb Superhost. And yes, you read the title right. I'm finally making this video. I've been asked dozens of times and I'm so sorry that I haven't got to it before, but I've been kind of busy. So here's the question that I've heard time and time again, which is, how do I scale my Airbnb and short-term rental business using virtual assistants? Let's do it. So the first question you might be wondering is, well, why do I use a virtual assistant in the first place? And the answer is pretty simple. I really love hosting and I love the experience part. I love bringing joy to families and international travelers, and obviously the financial gain is fantastic, but that doesn't mean that I like every single thing about hosting. Like for instance, I don't do my own cleaning. I wouldn't do it very well. I certainly wouldn't enjoy it for like a day or a week or a year, much less like 10 years. So the goal for me in hosting and using this to achieve my 15-year plan is to be able to do it for 15 years or longer. So one of the things that I did as I started to scale was figure out what I'm uniquely qualified to do and what it is that I like to do, and everything that I'm either not uniquely qualified, meaning like I could train somebody else to do it, or that I don't enjoy, I went on a mission to like find somebody who could do it better than me, more reliably than me, and maybe even do it like full time, and they might really enjoy it. So that seemed like a really good solution for me, and I want to tell you what it is that I rely on my virtual assistant to do. And what I have my virtual assistant do is very similar to what a co-host might do, but she uses her own password. She logs into all of my different properties. She does so on Airbnb and HomeAway. She looks at the Google shared calendar, and then I've put together a series of templates and responses and a timeline and a series of operations that she then executes for me to help me run my Airbnb business. So think of things like questions. She responds to questions. Think of things like calendar management. She knows what dates are available, what dates aren't. She organizes all of my cleaning teams and the different people that are involved in maintenance and so on. So she's like my co-host, if you will, but she handles all of that. And the things that I'm uniquely qualified to do, strategy, pricing, expansion, financial analysis, things like that, by the fact that I've given all of the other things that I don't like to do to my virtual assistant, that frees me up to do all the things that I do like to do, and it also makes it much more sustainable and repeatable, and therefore much more likely to accomplish my 15-year goal. So before you start skipping ahead, because the next part's really important, I want to go ahead and tell you where I found my virtual assistant, and it was pretty simple. I follow an entrepreneur in social media, Chris Drucker. If you don't follow him, he's worthwhile. He's got some really interesting points. He's a British guy who lives in the Philippines, and he runs many businesses, including Virtual Assistant Finder. And so they're based in the Philippines. He uses Filipino people all over the place, and it's been really good for me. Now, the Filipino people are friendly, hospitable. English is very strong. It's not native English, so like just be warned about that. But here's a case in point where I started to follow somebody. I liked what they were doing. I learned that he had this business, and I gave it a shot. It works for me, and if you want to try it, there's a link below. I think it's worth checking out. So this part's really important. And the good news is it's almost entirely in your control, and that is, how do you train them? And the bottom line is, the more time and energy you think about what you want them to do and how you want them to do it, and the more time and energy you put into like a training program and checking in with them and so on, the better the results will be. Now there's two components of it. You have to select the right person, so like it's not worth training the wrong person, and if you've never employed anybody, that's a big lesson, like hiring people and learning like when to invest more, double down, and when to walk away. You know that old like Willie Nelson song, you have to know when to hold them and when to fold them.
You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away.
If you've never done that, expect some challenges. I've been an entrepreneur for years and across many different businesses. I can tell you hiring the right people is not only the most important thing, it's also the most challenging. And a virtual assistant is no different. So the more time and energy you think about like what you need and who the right person is, and putting the time and energy into the thoughtful description, the more likely that the virtual finder program is going to work for you. And then once you have yours, what you're going to do is Skype interview. I recommend you interview at least 2 or 3 people. Look for personality, look for fit, look for engagement, look for hospitality, like all those things that you want your employee to have. And then once you have them, then the hard work really begins, because now it's one-on-one. You have to express to them your why, how important the hospitality is, how you want things handled, the timeliness of it. Again, think about everything and then spend a lot of time and energy, and if you do that, you will be rewarded. more likely than not, most people won't invest the time and energy, and then they'll give up on the program and just be like, oh, this didn't work, what a waste of time and money. You have to commit to it, you have to work it, you have to try, you have to hire right, and then you have to train right. The last thing I'm going to talk about in this video are like challenges and problems to overcome. And there's a few, actually more than a few, there's a lot. And I can't even say I have a crystal ball and I know them all. I'm sure you'll have your own problems. But like in anything else, the upside is so worthwhile, like the ability to scale and spend the time and energy on what it is that I want to do and that I'm uniquely qualified and that motivates me, and rid myself of everything else is really worthwhile. So here's some challenges that I've faced. The first one is the infrastructure in the Philippines, where my virtual assistant Marie is based, is not the same as here in New York City, which means that we have power outages, there's storms that go out, internet speeds are slower, and things like that. And so at first it might be frustrating, but then it sort of becomes part of the routine and you sort of can expect it a little bit. And so what that means is I'll have an idea of when a response came in and whether it's been responded to or not, and I give her, you know, a couple of, like an hour or two before I will jump in and respond. Again, it's infrequent, but my point is you have to have like your finger on the pulse and know what's going on. The second one is communication and language. Chances are they're not going to be native English speakers, although this English language is very strong. So you have to give them a little bit more freedom and leeway and like understanding, and then work with them. That's the good news. The good news is they have less like baggage, if you will. So like training somebody who's been trained improperly, who has a bad attitude, or, you know, isn't a good employee, that's really almost impossible. But taking somebody who's like open and excited and looking forward to working with you, and then like helping mold them and define that culture between the two of you, you should view that as an opportunity / challenge. Another thing that I would say is that, you know, they're doing this because they have to, right? Like they need this job. It's super important to them to pay for maybe their mortgage or the food on the table. And it's really important that you are, you know, humble and nice and respectful. And it can be challenging if, like, you know, you've never met this person and their internet's down and they didn't respond. And I've had a situation with Marie in my particular case where somebody asked for a very key specific date. It was peak. It was like over Christmas and New Year's, and she made a mistake and it ended up costing me $6,000 or $7,000, and that period's still open. And so like I could get really, really upset and I could like throw a temper tantrum and, you know, like ruin the relationship, or I can try and be empathetic about it and say, you know, $6,000 or $7,000 for this person is maybe a year's salary, or, you know, some huge amount of income. And so maybe she was nervous about it, maybe she made a mistake. And so rather than, you know, like throw the baby out with the bathwater, let's talk about it, let's regroup, let's try and understand what went through. If you ever have any questions, I'm always available, even though you might feel like you're working on your own. Like if there's something that's really important, I'm always available. So please feel free to interrupt me, ask for help, and so on. And it's that sort of mindset that I think is really important if you're going to hire somebody who lives, you know, 12 hours away in a different time zone, 3,000 miles that you may never meet, is appreciate like their reality, what's happening with them, and just be respectful and mindful of that. So that's a wrap. That's basically the ins and outs of what I do and how I do it and why I do it. And I would just leave you with this thought. If it's not a full-time job for you, like you don't have enough properties to employ somebody for full-time, this virtual assistant can help you with like your personal life. They can call and make doctor's appointments. They can call and do your like travel and book your hotels and your flights and so on. They're really capable. They're really eager. They're really excited to like help. So just open your mind and say, hey, I have a set of hands and a great mind and a upbeat person. How might I use them to help me? So the world is really, you know, up to you to define and work together, and I think it'll really work out. I'd love to hear your comments and your questions below. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, I would ask that you do so.